Hey everyone, welcome to the conversation. My name is Scott Mantz, and I'm so excited to be joined by director and co-writer Clint Bentley to talk about Train Dreams, an exquisite, beautiful film that is in theaters now, starts streaming on Netflix on November 21st. Clint, big congrats to you. I saw this movie at the Sundance Film Festival back in January, and it has remained one of my very, very favorite movies of the year.
Thank
My
you.
first question for you, Clint, is this. Why was Train Dreams going to be your second feature as a director?
It was a book that I had loved for a long time when it came out, but I actually hadn't considered making it a film until after I made Jockey, my first film, which was also at Sundance. And a group of producers had the rights to the book and they reached out. They'd been trying to make it for a while and trying to find a filmmaker to make it with. And they saw something in Jockey that they felt a connection to and asked me about adapting it. And when I went back and reread the book with an eye towards thinking about it as a film, it just like it really came alive. And it felt like not only a way that I could grow as a filmmaker with some of the things I was thinking about and approaches I was taking with Jockey, but also like expand on those things. And it just really felt like a beautiful piece of work to try and bring to a film.
Well, when it came to adapting the novella that the film is based on, you and your writing partner, Greg Huidar, are Oscar nominees for the film Sing Sing, which was also an exquisite, beautiful film with amazing performances across the board. But because you're taking a short story and expanding it, how did you guys do that? What informed your approach to expand the story of Train Dreams?
I mean, it's a slim novella. It's only 117 pages, and yet there's so much in between each line and in between each word. And Dennis Johnson, beautiful writer for anybody who hasn't had the joy of reading his work. I would encourage you to look up something of his. But he in Train Dreams specifically, he puts so much in between each line and each word, and he covers 5 years in two sentences, and just makes you feel the depth of experience of a human life. And so that was a big approach of trying to honor the spirit of the book and trying to bring that feeling that I had reading it onto the screen, um, but yet let the film become its own thing and really like be faithful to the spirit of the novella, but then, let the film go where it needed to go and let the script go where it needed to go. And that was always a balancing act. And there were things I think that I wanted to speak about as a filmmaker with the film that maybe I saw the germ of an idea in the book, but then wanted to use that as a springboard to talk about other things. And so, yeah, it was a really just like balancing act along the way of being faithful to the spirit of the book and the character, but then letting it grow into what it needed to be.
I gotta say, when I saw the film for the first time, I've now seen it three times. And when I
Oh
love
man,
about the movie, yeah, I know.
thank you.
When I love a movie, it's like, get out of my way. I love this film so much. I just feel like they don't make movies like this anymore. But you did. So what ultimately informed your approach to the way you're going to direct it? Were there movies that inspired you? Like maybe a director like Terrence Malick? Because I just feel like this movie does really cast a spell in that way.
Mm. No, thank you. That's very kind. I mean, it's hard. I've said this a few times, but it's hard to be a filmmaker working today and trying to make something poetic and not be inspired by Terrence Malick. I think he's inspired so many of us and continues to. I was thinking more along the lines of I think where I was taking my cues was um, more from life itself and trying to be true to this time and really like let a form come out in the movie that was just coming from like what each scene needed, if that makes sense. I was very inspired by Tarkovsky with this film and the way that he covers a scene and the way that he can make time feel stretched or compressed very beautifully. Bresson, Jules and Jim was a big inspiration just in terms of like this feeling that time is going by so quickly, and then you look up and like 5 years has gone by, and you're like, "Wait, where did that go?" Um, this lightness of touch. So there were a few things like that, but really, I think like getting into it, I was really just trying to listen to what the film wanted along the way, and try and be inspired by things, but let those inspirations fall away as well, so that I wasn't like clinging too tight. The one filmmaker I do want to mention also who like I just love and I feel like not enough people have seen his work is Roy Andersson, Swedish filmmaker who's done some really beautiful films, like Songs from the Second Floor and A Pigeon Sat Alone on a Branch, but like does these like has this amazing style where he like sets up a room and it's like an airport entryway or a restaurant or something like that. And then this scene just plays out and keeps building on itself in these like 5 to 10 minute sequences that end up like becoming very rich and strange and beautiful. And I was really inspired by that. They're almost like moving paintings, and they keep like the story keeps building on itself in these things.
I've been a fan of Joel Edgerton for a long, long, long time now, but I feel like this is one of his very, very, very best performances. What made him the perfect Robert Grenier? Like what made him just the perfect fit?
I think, yeah, I've been a fan of his for a long time too. I agree with you. And seeing him do everything from Loving to like reinvent Falstaff for us is like, I think he's incredible. He can do so much and he's got so much range and he can be quiet and he can be like simple and he can also be like very big in his reactions like we've seen with Gatsby. And I think like he also like has this balance of like he's very tough and can be very masculine. He can also be very tender and sweet and um and there's such a depth to him that I think like I find that anytime I watch him I'm just like what is he doing over there, what's he thinking, and I feel like that comes across a lot very beautifully in this film.
Very beautifully. And I feel like that sort of like space that you're talking about, that lightness of touch that you're talking about, is captured so perfectly, not just in the vistas, but also between the actors. And, when it came to Felicity Jones and Kerry Condon,
Oh my God.
both of them have great chemistry with Joel for
Yeah.
different reasons. How did you come to cast them? And like, when did you especially realize that, oh my God, these two in their time are perfect with Joel?
Felicity, the first conversation I had with her, she understood the character in a deep way. She not only appreciated the script and what it was talking about and had this yearning for wanting to be in nature, but she understood something very deep about the character, I think, and helped me understand the character better of Gladys Olding. And we really like after one conversation with her, we really expanded out that character and brought a lot of more depth and nuance to it. That it was just like amazing working with her on that front. And then Carrie, she had been a friend of Joel's for a long time, had worked with him together on a film called Ned Kelly back in the day in Australia. She was very young when she made that film with him, and they just remained friends. But she was very special in a way where like she's got these long monologues about grief and recovery and ecology, and after we had written them I talked to her and I was like, listen, this is probably going to sound terrible, and so feel free to put it in your own words and we can adjust it to something that sounds more natural, blah blah blah. And she was just like, no, let me just try it, it's going to be fine. And like she did it and just like delivered it beautifully and made it feel as if it was the most natural thing while also like not losing like bringing like a philosophical depth to it that I think wasn't even there. And so it was just like amazing working with them.
When you have scenes with Joel and Felicity, and when you have scenes with Joel and Carrie, because you do let the scenes breathe. You
Mm.
do let the quiet moments, like the passage of time. You really feel it. But what was it about these actors, especially Joel and Carrie and Felicity, like when you're filming, like when did they surprise even you? Was there a moment during filming where you like, whoa?
I feel like every day was something like that. And part of it was because we were working with like chickens and dogs and children that you can't like you can't not be surprised by what they're going to do because you have no idea what they're going to do. But I think one of the days in particular was like the first day we filmed with Joel and Felicity. And there's a scene where like it's right before they take the family photo. It's early in the film. They're about to like they're kind of like waking up in bed together in the morning and knowing that he's about to go off again so that he's got to go off to work again. And in the script it was just a little moment. It was just like that they're laying in bed together and she was supposed to just like kind of like tickle his back and wake him up. That was it. and we just let them be, once we got what we needed, we just let them be. And just Adolfo is beautiful at like catching these moments in a really painterly way. And they just kind of created this scene out of this moment that really like um improving through this moment like really became something very beautiful. And so that there was a lot of that where just like I don't know, you get great actors and you put them in a great location, and just watching them kind of like bring something to life beyond what you ever thought it would be is a real joy. And I could watch it like there could have been a 3 hour version of this movie of just like a lot of that, for me.
Well, I'm going to ask you about that in a second, but I want to go back to what you said about Adolfo. You're referencing your cinematographer,
Yes,
Adolfo Veloso. And when I saw the movie for the first time, I just went, wow, this movie is gorgeous.
he's
Uh,
pretty good.
it's amazing. How did you sort of decide to shoot, well, I guess natural light most of the time? I mean, what were that kind of those talks that you had with Adolfo about how you were going to shoot Train Dreams?
Yeah, he's amazing. And we shot Jockey together. And so we had a bit of a shorthand. And we also like we had started to create a style between us that we wanted to continue and grow on and refine, mixing these very natural moments and just like very handheld cinematography that almost feels like it more of like a documentary than anything else, with like very specific zooms and dolly moves and things like that, and trying to find some way those can interact with each other without feeling kind of like all over the place. One of the things we wanted to do was we wanted it to feel real, even though you're making this period piece and it's about this time that can feel very distant and very different from the area we're living in. We wanted it to feel as if you were there, right? And not like this distant thing. And so that was a big part of it, of just trying to like embrace the naturalism. And then outside of that, we wanted our actors to feel very comfortable in their space, just like that moment I just mentioned between Joel and Felicity, like so that moments like that could come to life. Almost like trying to make them forget that they're on a film set if we could. And so that then led into, yeah, we shot in all natural lights except for one scene. All the things that are lit by all the candlelight scenes and the fire scenes, those are lit by fires and candlelight. And there's not like a bank of artificial lights that we put in there. And so Joel's talked about it a few times where he would just be sitting around a fire with Bill Macy or with John Deal, and that he's just having this conversation, and all of a sudden he like doesn't know where Adolfo is, can't see him beyond the fire,
Oh,
and,
wow.
and really becomes like where he's just having this moment with another actor. And so, yeah, I think Adolfo's phenomenal at like not only creating these very like painterly images that I just love to look at, but also finding a way to within that let the actors feel like they're totally free to go wherever and do whatever, which is that's a very delicate thing to do.
And the minimal, not having those lights, really puts the actors in a situation where they're in the moment,
Yes.
they're feeling the time for sure. In the beginning of the film, during Will Patton's narration, he says, "The old world is gone now."
Yeah.
Okay, how did you find it? How did you recreate that old world, especially like where you filmed and getting those trains? And
Oh,
then,
yeah.
we'll get into costume design and production design.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. We went up and filmed in the location where it's set, up in Washington State, mostly around Spokane on the eastern side, but we did some on the other side around Seattle as well. And when Joel is trudging through the snow or laying in the mud, like he's trudging through the snow and laying in mud, and yeah, it was just trying to get to an aspect of like trying to recreate this time and recreate a feeling of this time again in a very natural way, and a very like not making it feel like this alien environment, which it sometimes can when you watch a period film, but just make it feel as natural as if you set up a camera today. And we've got other gadgets and everything, but like we're just living through a space and a time. Yeah, we were very lucky to be able to film on a real old steam locomotive for a bit. And I'll say like a lot of that is not only with our production designer Alex Schaller and how incredible she is at creating these spaces for our actors to live in. That cabin was a real cabin somebody could have moved into, before we burnt it down. But a lot of our cast and crew wanted to just live in there. All of the drawers had were full of things so that the actors could do anything in the space and go anywhere. There was nothing that was off limits because it was fully built out with their lives. That first locomotive that crosses the tracks in the beginning, we couldn't find this like old rudimentary locomotive that we could bring out there, and so they built that to like bring across the tracks. She also, we wanted to like simulate cutting into these old trees, these huge old 1,000-year-old trees, but we would never do that. And so she built these huge stumps that were like 15 feet tall that were out of wood and plywood and all this, and then painted them to look like trees. And then we could have our actors actually cut into them. And then also I'll say our VFX supervisor and our VFX crew was amazing. And there's a ton of, you wouldn't think about it to watch it, but I'm proud to say like there's a ton of VFX in this film. And so like one example is that where we built this 15-foot tall stump that our actors could cut into and then extended it up with VFX.
Wow.
And so just things like that to try and sell the world and show the things that they were doing, like cutting into trees and like a fire without damaging the world and doing the same thing that we're kind of criticizing.
How, in filming you said that you built the cabin and set it on fire. I mean, like, how did you sort of go about that? You know what I mean? Like, how did you shoot that day?
You
You
take
know,
a couple matches and you walk up to the
well, that part I
no, I'm
figured
just kidding. Uh, with that day, I mean, that was a big moment because we were about halfway through shooting, and we had finally kind of gotten our rhythm. We're shooting at a very unorthodox style where we've shot along the way. We've filmed our scenes, and then we've got 15 minutes at sunset before like we break. And we're like, okay, just Joel and Felicity are gonna follow the chickens around, and we're gonna walk behind them and kind of like give them prompts of things to do and see what we can find. So that takes a minute with a crew to like get into that rhythm because it's not a traditional way to make a film. And yet it gives so much magic. And then we had this cabin that was very special. We filmed all the early scenes with Joel and Felicity and the kids. And then we were moving on to the next phase of production. And as part of that, we were burning down this cabin that was very special to us. And really like, you just get the fire department there and get all the safety tech, and then you light it up and let it go. And we've got a few cameras going, getting it from different angles. But it was really this special time where like all of the crew came out. Even if they didn't need to be there, they all came out to kind of watch this thing that was so special go up, and us to like move on to the next phase. It was kind of like making, when these people make mandalas and like spend all this time and then kind of wipe them away. I think it just like got us into this special feeling of what Grenier was going through a bit, and
yeah,
and what
sure.
we were kind of talking about in the film of life moving on and finding new depth even when you've lost something special to you.
What were some of the other more challenging scenes for you while shooting?
Oh my gosh. I mean, there's so much that that was challenging in terms of, like I said, we're shooting out in nature. We're working with animals. You're working with dogs and chickens and children that you can't control. You're shooting out in the snow. I tried to get into this mindset along the way where I was just like taking whatever seemed like a difficulty and trying to go with it, and if we lost a location, trying to ask like, okay, what opportunity can that give us? Or if we were going to shoot this scene at sunset and then all of a sudden we've missed it and now we need to shoot it at night. What is the movie trying to show us like that can be more special about it? And so trying to turn those difficulties into new opportunities. And a lot of times that did that in a way like there's a big moment for us that's really emotional where Gladys and Grenier have their first kiss, and it's something he remembers and he's remembering fondly. And that just like we kept like having to push that back in the schedule for one reason or another. And it was on the very last day before Felicity left to go to another shoot. And we didn't have a good location. We didn't know where we were going to go. And we had looked at this area that was like under some trees. It was where we were shooting something else. It was like off in this little field under these trees. And we are like, all right, we'll shoot it there. And I guess like it'll be fine. And then I went the morning of to find a spot that like could look nice. And that field, in the 2 weeks since we had seen it the first time, that field had just exploded with these yellow flowers. And it
Wow.
was full of yellow flowers. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh my God, this is so special. And that was just kind of the tenor of the shoot of like it just seemed like anything that started as something that was a bit of a difficulty ended up becoming a blessing in some way or another if you could just find a way to listen to it.
Always, always just, it's like, improv, just, yes, and just bring,
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
um,
like
the
jazz.
score, the music is
Oh yeah.
gorgeous. Absolutely beautiful score. Bryce Dessner, talk about, your collaboration and what you were looking for with that score.
He's amazing. He's such an incredible composer because he can do both with his work with the National and with other bands. He works with Sue John Stevens and Bon Iver, and he can do this very modern work and have this very modern sensibility. But then he's also a classical composer and writes ballets and writes these classical compositions. And I think the blending of that is just he's a very rare composer and very beautiful that and the score is a good example of that where it's just like him playing guitar and it's just kind of almost a little folk ditty and this very beautiful delicate thing and then there's these very big orchestral moments like with the fire where it almost starts going into like some Philip Glass type like
Yeah.
really like avant-garde feeling stuff and to have one composer who can do all of that and do it in such a way without it losing the thread to the film, losing that emotional thread you're trying to draw through is just like amazing. He did a lot of work early on. We were just sending him like I was sending him like cuts of scenes or just like images from the film. And he started composing early and composed in a lot of spaces they don't normally compose film scores in. So he's working in like these old studios in like Chicago and in Portland and there was something where we talked about we wanted we wanted to feel the air of those spaces. We wanted to feel the dust in the rooms. It was a beautiful collaboration that ended up I would get pieces from him and then those would influence how we would edit scenes with my editor Parker Laramie. And so it was a really like beautiful like back and forth collaboration.
You talked about like wanting to watch a 3 hour cut of this movie. So now I have to ask, what was your first cut? How long?
It was like 2 hours and 40 minutes. It
Okay.
doesn't need to be that. I think I'm happy with the length. But that it is now. But yeah, the first cut was like 2 hours and 40 minutes. Yeah, there's a lot there.
Like, how did you decide, talk about like a total kill your darlings kind of situation? How did you decide what was going to stay and what was going to go?
You're just trying to get to the point as a filmmaker where you're listening to the film and listening to what the film wants. And that's a tough thing at times because you can lose perspective. Um, Especially somebody who's like living with it so long, watching cut after cut. And this is a very like kind of delicate cut, delicate edit of a film where you've got to like anything you do ripples across the film for good or for bad. As a filmmaker, like I like showing the film to people a lot in the edit. And I show it to friends who have no idea what the film is and what it's supposed to be, show it to crew members who worked on it and know what I'm trying to do. And and just trying to listen to that feedback less about like trying to please the audience in a way of like giving them everything they want because that's ends up not pleasing the audience in the end, but just in a way of like listening to like what's working, what's not, and where is it getting sticky, and just trying to like make it, especially in a film like this that doesn't have a plot device moving it forward, and you're really like just letting kind of time pull it forward. Like, how do you find that push and pull of like settling into moments, but then also letting time just like rocket by at times, and yeah, it's just a very like, getting to version 56 or 57 of the edit.
Well, last question for you, Clint, is, after making this film, after having a premiere on Sundance and the reactions you've gotten since then, but in terms of making it, what was the biggest takeaway for you as a filmmaker directing Train Dreams?
I think I'm still trying to figure it out, honestly, but it really just like listening to life, listening to the world, and I think like going back to what we were talking about a bit earlier of like being open to whatever life is giving you and not rejecting it, but trying to like take it and make peace with it. And there's something about Grenier that's very moving to me where like some people say he's not active and stuff like that. And yet like I feel like he has this very beautiful sense of accepting life and moving with it and still like moving along, and he does a lot. He's trying to move forward, but with this kind of Zen acceptance of life that I'm still trying to learn.
Well, thank you for learning and for helping us all learn because Train Dreams, like I said at the top of this conversation, Clint, this is an exquisite, beautiful, beautiful film. I love it. Absolutely one of the very best movies of the year. Big
Yeah.
congrats to you. Once again, the film Train Dreams starts streaming on Netflix on November 21st. Make sure you spread the word so everyone can see this amazing film. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. And thank you, Clint Bentley, for an amazing conversation.
Thank you, Scott.